By the time you get to the material, it's too late. They should know that they are relevant. We're doing this for you. That's the hook. That's the engagement. Then you can go into your material, whether it's on a slide form or an activity for them to do, or just telling a story.
Welcome to Sales Made Easy, a podcast for business and personal growth. Join Harry Spaight as he hosts sales experts and business owners who share their journeys of personal growth and business success. Now, here's your host, Harry.
Today with me on the Sales Made Easy podcast, I have certified world-class speaking coach Mike McQuillan coming in from the great country of Peru in South America, not the city in upstate New York. He is an English teacher and he started Fit Presenter to teach speaking skills to the fitness industry. And he's expanded that service to include all professionals, especially solopreneurs. And today we're going to talk about speaking. So Mike, your turn to speak. What's the good word?
Well, thanks, Harry. I thought we were going to talk geography. Kudos for knowing about Peru, New York. That's an obscure one. There's also a Peru, Nebraska, which apparently is pretty well known here. I don't know if it was some government office where they had a TV and they're showing people in Peru, Nebraska, and it was Peru Day with Peruvian flags and Peruvian food and everything in Nebraska. So,
oh my goodness.
This country gets around.
I don't know how and where that came from in my mind, but I must have traveled through Peru, New York at one time in my life. So there you go. I can't figure out how that mind works in mine, but it's great to have you on the show, Mike. So we're going to talk a little bit about speaking and the value of speaking. And I'd love to know a little bit about your background just to establish that you know what the heck you're talking about.
Well, thank you for giving me that accolade that I know what the heck I'm talking about.
And you do.
There was a time when I didn't. I have to let's go back to high school. I was the junior class president, and I always hear about being nervous in public speaking. I haven't been as nervous in my life as giving my candidate speech at the end of 10th grade to run for office in 11th. I don't remember anything. I think I said a lot. I think that was it. We were shifting back and forth from one leg to another. But the audience had a lot of sympathy for me because they knew I was trying. So that sympathy is what gave me the confidence. That confidence is what led to leadership, and then that led to pure arrogance. And then the next year I got voted out because I just was too full of myself, and I got to let my true adolescent anger come out on stage. But that's when I knew the power of the stage. A year later, I was on that same stage as an Elvis impersonator. So I've never been shy about being on stage. But even then, I knew whatever I do in life, it's going to involve speaking and presenting.
Yeah, that's really an interesting story. Going back to those years, I mean, you had the courage to run for class office, so that's pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are businesses missing today, or small business owners? What are they missing when it comes to speaking?
I would say that small business they're missing less. They have more opportunity and more willingness. Now, I'm willing to work with corporate leaders if they're willing to work with me. I believe that small businesses have more to gain through public speaking. They have more willingness to learn and more personal passion to pour into what they do in business. So many people in business they treat speaking like it's a homework assignment. It's the boardroom, it's the conference room. It's let's get this over with. I'm going to have my assistant make a slide deck for me. I'm going to read it to my audience, who are probably made up of subordinates, so they have to put up with me, or they're made up of my superiors who don't think very highly of me. So what if I blow the presentation? And that's the world of the corporate world. Forgive me for being so cynical. But when I meet solopreneurs, they pour their personal passion and their life history, whether it's junior class president or something they did very young, they pour their whole life into it. So it's actually less is missing. That's why I love working with solopreneurs, because there's so many options of what to pour into your presentation, make it relevant to your business and make it relevant to your audience and to your future clients.
Oh, I love it. So I'm thinking now, you mentioned PowerPoint and or maybe you just said presentation, but the whole concept that many have about speaking is the slide deck. Can we talk a little bit about that and why you think that's such an awesome idea, is to have 73 slides with tons of text in them? Just kidding.
73. That was the year that the Mets lost the World Series to the Oakland A's. So that's the only thing 73 has.
Okay.
The only four-letter word that I find offensive is deck. Now, we can talk about my opinions. You and I have shared conversations on this topic. The fact is, if you're watching and listening to this now, you already have your opinion. There's not much I could do to change your mind. So obviously, death by PowerPoint. So we know the expression. Oh, but not when I do it. I saw a presentation a couple of weeks ago where the host said, this is not going to be death by PowerPoint. Hold on, let me share my screen. You know what we had next? He was right. It wasn't death by PowerPoint. It was death by Google Slides. So it wasn't. So he was right. Listen, we all have our opinions on there. People say, oh, it's not death by PowerPoint when I do it. I just use it to find my place. No, slides are fine if they convey a visual. Like I've got visuals here in my background. That's fine. But if you're using it just to keep your own place, that's a lot. I just use it to keep my place in my presentation. That means you are having a conversation with your own slides, with your own bullet points. It's you and the bullet points, and those pesky people in the audience, they are a coincidence. They're an afterthought. They're kind of a nuisance. Well, the whole purpose of you presenting is speaking to an audience. That's the thing about the deck. Whether you use a deck or not, use slides, use visuals, who are you talking to? Are you talking to your slides to satisfy a speaking requirement? Are you just getting up there to hear yourself talk? Or are you speaking to the people who are there listening to you?
Yeah, I'm thinking that there are some people that think that speaking is the slide presentation. As I've watched many over the years where they have the opportunity to speak, they present, and it is 100% about the slides. Yeah. And I wonder if sometimes people just don't know if they're brought up in an environment like that. I know one particular company I worked for, their manufacturer rep was saying, we're from so-and-so and we can't do anything without our slides, without our presentation. And it's, so if you're in that environment and you come out of it, maybe that's what you think speaking is. But I love what you just said. Really, you got to have the audience in mind. So how can a person, maybe with an open mind, what can they start thinking about to kind of let go of some of the slides and they can be more focused on the people in front of them, whether it be live or through Zoom?
Well, I always say, don't be a naysayer. See what I did there? It's so easy to tell people don't do what you're already comfortable doing. When I coach people, we work together on stories and modules. We come up with so many things in your life. There's no room. There's no place to put that information on a slide. If you come across, it's all about the construct of your presentation. If you come out with the kiss of death, which is, let me tell you a little something about myself. I appreciate you introducing me with some bio points so people know who I am. And I do appreciate that. But if I start off, just let me tell you about me. This is where I went to school. This is how pretty my girlfriend is. This is how pretty my wife is. Glad they don't know each other. Here's a picture of the family dog. Here's where I went to college. Here's a picture of me skydiving. Here's a picture of me bodybuilding. I'm wearing a Speedo. I'm oiled up. Me. Well, it's better to present that with a slide deck because all that information is in bullet point form. But guess what? The audience doesn't care. But if you open with a story to captivate that audience, okay, I opened up by telling you about how the time I got elected junior class president, then they voted me out because I was so arrogant, and I learned you've got to relate to the audience, not pontificate to them. And nervousness is your friend sometimes because you know what? Too much confidence can lead to arrogance. You need to pull that back. That was a story that cannot be exemplified with a slide. So if you're up there telling stories, making a point, then there is no room. This slide will detract from what you're there to communicate. But if you start by congratulating yourself, a slide deck is a better option. So put that focus on your audience. Tell them what they need to know in story form. The slides You won't need to get rid of the slides. They just won't fit. They won't support your presentation.
Awesome. So what does someone do? Like if maybe they have some slides now. I mean, I'm kind of jumping all over the place because that's what I do, but I'm thinking if they
Cool.
have slides and they maybe don't trust themselves, or they feel like there's enough bullet points that they need to show about charts and graphs, so forth. I get sometimes you have to show numbers.
Yeah.
So maybe you have that. What do they do in the meantime with what's in the background? And I see this sometimes on Zoom, and I see it sometimes on stages when I watch TEDx talks. What do you suggest people do with the slides at that point when they want to steer away from the slides for a few minutes?
That is a challenge. Well, let me say this. As a teacher, my mantra is by the time you open the book, it's too late. I teach English as a foreign language. And if I'm teaching you, I don't know, a certain verb tense, we need to practice that. Let's say I'm just practicing past simple. We start with the present, and then we drill the past, and we work into it. We drill it, we practice it before we open up the book.
Okay.
In terms of your slides, if you have data that needs to be out there, whether it's a sales report or something where you need to know these statistics and they have to be in bullet point, because let's face it, if you're going to throw out numbers, people should be able to read these numbers and not just hear you say them. That's fair. Introduce the concepts first. Tell them what they need to know first, then put up the slide. There are different strategies. So many lecture halls and speaking venues are set up where the screen is the dominant thing, like Patton in front of the American flag. But instead of a flag, you've got bullet points. It's hard not to look. I would put in a blank slide in between, or just your logo, so they're not reading while they're listening to you. That would be one technique.
Yeah, I like that, where you can kind of because if I'm there watching someone leave that slide up, I'm finding something to read in the slide.
Yeah.
Right. Even though they're not talking about that slide, it's there. It becomes what the focus is, unfortunately. So yeah, good idea about the blank slide, for instance, or something else in between where you just want to kind of veer off. But especially if you're speaking extemporaneously, that's got to be difficult, right? Where you're trying to go between slides and you've got nothing. You just got to kind of chalk it up to, it's like, I'm going to speak extemporaneously, but please don't look at the slide. I don't know what to do in that moment. Any suggestions on that? Or
that's a good question. Like I said, I could always make a ton of suggestions. Here's what not to do. And again, I don't like to be a naysayer. Is what not to do is play word association game. You put up a slide, say, "Oh, yeah, basically what that means is this," and you're just trying to think. You're trying to make heads or tails. Speaking of technology, my hands disappear in this.
Right. Yes. This is the hands-free podcast.
Yeah, I'm from Long Island. You know that I can't help it. But you talk about a lot of people speak extemporaneously because they don't know what to say. If you're not scripted every single word, that's fine, but know what you want to talk about. Know what message you want to convey. So many people say the word says, I don't know, blue triangle. Basically what that means is this. And blah, 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 blah. You don't know what you're going to say. So that's, again, is the thing not to do. And I don't like to just be a naysayer, but this is why it happens. They come up unprepared. They want that slide to carry them.
Yeah. Well, I know that I thought corporate speaking. So I've come from an environment where I was around a lot of slide presentations.
Okay.
Then I realized that I wanted to get rid of the text, and because I didn't want to be one of those that was reading slides. I read this book one time about, I forgot the name of it, but it was all about having too much content, too much information. And I think the book was called Brief. And in it, it said basically have 10 slides. You might have heard this before. Number 30 fonts, 30 type fonts, or 30 size fonts, however you say that. And then 20 something else. But it's really big numbers, right? So that you're thinking, I'm only going to have a few slides. I'm going to have big fonts. And that way people are not going to be reading while I'm speaking. That kind of helped me a little bit, but then I started to incorporate pictures instead of, I tried this experiment of playing with transitions going into the slide. It's like, oh, this is really cool. I can float things in or I can fly things in. So now I've got a slide that's interactive almost, and now it's entertaining. And I said, no, that's not it. So then I started to use pictures instead of text. And I kind of settled in on that. And then finally, I think one time I listened to you say something and you said, man, don't depend on the slides. It's like, okay, so I'm going to start speaking without slides. And that's been my evolution here of speaking.
Well, thanks, Harry. And we can talk about slides all day, but people have their opinions on what they are. I'll just say this one thing and we can move on to some more about the audience experience. It's that, remember this, what you're reading back here, if I can point to it, you're reading back there, that is not visual. That is auditory. Letters are auditory. Unless you're Chinese, Japanese, or Korean and your language is pictographic, these letters represent something auditory. They do not stimulate the visual. The microphone here does. My logo there does. But typically those text slides are not a visual element. So if that's your cop-out to say, well, I need a visual element for visual learners, that's not it. If you want something visual, tell stories that have a lot of imagery in them. You will stimulate their visual learning capacity without showing them anything. So that's how you get past the visual. Or what about visual learners? Tell stories where you're very imagistic. And that's how you satisfy that.
I like it. So talk to me, what kind of preparation, as far as you mentioned the audience, what should people be thinking about when it comes to the audience as they prepare their speech ahead of time?
Okay, well, the important thing is you've got a very short amount of time to engage that audience. It's a funny thing. I always liken this back to teaching methodology because teachers should be the best public speakers, but it's amazing how many teachers don't like to speak publicly. They're in front of their classroom all day and they don't like to speak publicly. But the one thing that definitely translates over is how you structure it. And I learned a methodology called EPA, engage, practice, activate. The last institute where I learned was PPP, present, practice, produce. They sound similar, but they're not. Present, practice, produce means first, I'm going to show you the material. It could be a slide. It could be a video. And the reason for it, and this is another topic we can get on, is because the people who rule the world do it with technology. That's why we put so much premium on you have to have something digital. You have to have something social media. You have to have a visual thing because that's what all the rich, powerful people do. That's why it's so important. Regular people like you and me, we like to tell stories relate to people. But either way, E is engage. Engage that audience first. Use the most important word in public speaking, which is you. Never some of you, one of you, a few of you, how many of you. It's always you. Speak to everybody in that audience as if they are that one person is the only person in the audience. Everybody, I want to feel like I'm the only person here. You're talking directly to me. Everybody else here is just keeping me company. And that's when you relate to that audience. And that's how you engage. Give them something where they know you're speaking to them. The fact that you're speaking to them is just as important as the material you're delivering. And that comes first. And that goes right back to by the time you open the book, it's too late. By the time you get to the material, it's too late. They should know that they are relevant. We're doing this for you. That's the hook. That's the engagement. Then you can go into your material, whether it's on a slide form or an activity for them to do, or just telling a story. You meet them where they are first.
Yeah, beautiful. When you said you versus some of you, what's the difference there?
Well, have you ever seen Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro?
Yes, but many years ago. I don't remember too many scenes.
Do you know the scene when he's in his kitchen and he's practicing?
No.
Are you talking to me?
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
You must be talking to me. I don't see anybody else here. That's what makes the people in the audience feel special, is it when I felt like you were speaking directly to me. Have you ever been in an audience like that where somebody, that's exactly what I'm thinking. That's exactly how I feel. But you see how many of you, I could be thinking, well, you're not talking to me. You're talking to somebody else. People who have that imposter syndrome, people who have that kind of outsider complex. I'm not really part of this group. Some of you might be thinking, oh, yeah, that's the other people.
Yeah.
A lot of people in that audience are going to feel excluded that way.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I get that. So thinking about the audience in the preparation, does it make sense to think about how do you balance out the material? I mean, I guess I'd ask it that way. How do you balance out the material and the audience so that sometimes you have to change the way you speak based on the audience, even though the material stays pretty much the same? What's your thought on that?
Well, you said it perfectly. The material stays the same. You adapt it to your audience. It depends on what type of speaking you do. And a lot of what I do with your keynote is that you're going to put this in modules. This way you can adapt that presentation depending on who your audience is and what their priorities are. This way you'll never give the same presentation twice, but it'll always have that same core ethos. So the way you adapt to your audience is which module you put in. You have the same opener, the same close, your same signature story, but you'll have different modules that you plug in depending on who it is. I was talking to somebody recently about golf in fitness. And there's a woman who teaches golf. Now, she doesn't only work with women, but there's definitely a niche there. So her three audiences are golfers who don't realize the importance of training in a gym, fitness professionals, personal trainers who don't recognize that golf might look like a very simple sport on TV, but training golfers is a very complicated exercise science. And then women in golf and specific issues that women have in the sport of golf. Traditionally a men's sport, a lot of times used as a backdrop for business deals and kind of breaking that mold. These are three separate messages that can be bottled up into one presentation. Depending on who your audience is, you lean more heavily on one of those modules. That's how you cater the material to the audience.
Gotcha. All right. So that makes sense for me. As you're speaking here, and you bring up what is kind of an interesting business and the opportunity there. What if someone's business is maybe they're in the services, maybe they've got a small plumbing business, maybe it's HVAC, maybe it's something along those lines. Let's just leave it at that. Does it make sense for them to speak as well, to use speaking as an opportunity for growing their business?
That's a great question. Don't know much about plumbing or HVAC, but I will say this. When I started at Toastmasters 23 years ago, you know what my job was? I was installing office furniture. Cubicles, cadenzas, putting furniture together. Did public speaking serve me on the job? Sort of. Because we had a softball team that were the company sponsor our softball team, and we were terrible. We never won a single game. The company loved us so much that they sponsored a little party for us at a local pub after the season, and we had a chance to roast each other because we were all so bad. I got to roast the shortstop, who was also the operations manager, worked in the office. He had been an installer, but he had that gift of gab. He had that ability to speak, so they put him in the office. The reputation was he wasn't a very good installer.
Okay.
So it came time for me to light him up. I took him to pieces. He was a really good hitter, except one time he stepped out of the batter's box. He would have hit a home run, but they called him out. So I'm going to throw that in the roast. But he was a terrible shortstop. Ball's always going through his legs. So when I got up there, we're here to celebrate a great leader, and he is a man of opportunity. He is revered throughout the league as the gateway to left center field. He's a visionary who knows how to think outside the box and occasionally step outside the box, saddling this team with yet another loss as cold and predictable as the steel case furniture that you so haphazardly assembled before being relegated to the office where you have since tested the outer limits of Microsoft spell check. Burn, baby, burn. Now,
wow. Eloquently done.
Thank you very much. Not bad for a 20-something-year-old Toastmaster. I was pretty new in the organization. That right there, if I had stuck around with that company, and it's funny, I left that job to get a job installing exercise equipment, which got fitness industry, which is a passion of mine, more than office furniture, believe it or not.
Okay.
But that demonstration could have moved me up in the company. You never know when it's your opportunity. Sometimes you need to speak to people because if you're plumbing HVAC, you might be bidding a contract. You might be speaking to city council officials. You never know. Every job is a public speaking potential. Not as much as being a city councilman, obviously, but there's always a professional opportunity in every job you have.
I totally agree. I'm thinking about people who maybe even if it's a chamber event, just getting up and speaking for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Where you can educate the audience. You now become the subject matter expert because you're educating the audience something. Here's what to look for. And if you have the skills of doing that, more so than maybe your technical skills.
Yeah, it's not fair.
Who's going to get the business, right? It's the one that's being viewed as an expert because of the speaking ability. But
it's not fair, but the good news is you've got a speaking coach who will get you through there. I can tell you every job, just about every job I've ever had, I raised my professional esteem because of my ability to speak or present. I can go down the line, whether it's in personal training and bringing people in to give workshops, or like I said, the gig installing office furniture. As a teacher, it's unbelievable. Other teachers don't want to get up and speak. As a high school wrestling coach, I have a blog post where I talk about that. The parents didn't know me very well because I wasn't a teacher in that school. They just knew me as the wrestling coach who's always yelling at their kids. So at the end of the season brunch, I had a chance to speak to them for a couple of minutes and they were blown away. I'm not broke. It sounds like I'm boasting, but the fact is they didn't think a wrestling coach who's not even a teacher here would have these skills. And quite a few people told me we had no idea you could speak. It changes your reputation instantly. And the less esteem, the less prestige the work that you do has, the faster the opportunities are to grow. So a well-spoken politician is par for the course. The first time a plumber has to address the city council while we need certain tubing to upgrade this building, and you stand and deliver, people are going to say, oh, somebody get that man a show on HGTV.
Yeah, no, it's true. I love what you're saying here. So there's definitely opportunity for businesses to grow, even though you might not think you love speaking. So how do we tie in or solve the I'm afraid to speak, I don't know, I'm not a paid professional speaker, or whatever the fears are, other than hiring a coach? What's the first step that they might need to take?
Okay, well, as a speaking coach, I'd like to say the only way is to hire a coach.
Yes. Okay, other than the only way,
other than the optimal way to do it. Toastmasters is obviously, everything changed for me when I joined Toastmasters. And find the right club. There's so many options, especially virtually now, because some clubs are brutal, just boring and only care about procedures, and it'll put a bitter taste in your mouth for the Toastmasters experience. As you know, you're in Florida. I'm the president of Palm Beach Toastmasters of Palm Beach State College. Gotta love the internet. I'm the president of that club, and I'm in Peru. I'm also a member of the Lima Toastmasters here. These are great clubs. I've also been a member of clubs that weren't so great. I've visited quite a few clubs that weren't so great. So Toastmasters and finding the right club that says, this is where I want to be, and be selective and say, I don't know if this is the club I want to join. That's the first thing I can think of. It's for everybody. Toastmasters presents themselves like it's this great executive leadership training. It does have that component, but it is for everybody. That's one thing I would say. Another is any opportunity to speak brings you closer to having that confidence. Even if it's just asking a question at a city council meeting, just to get up and hear your voice through a PA system, because so many people haven't ever spoken into a microphone their entire lives.
Great advice. So if someone said, so now where do you come in, and how do people, when they approach you, what's typically their status, where they are today, and what does that look like as it evolves?
It's a funny thing, because in my greatest ideal professional life, people come to me and say, Mike, I've got a keynote presentation to give in a couple of months, and I want you to help me write it and deliver it. That's ideal. Biggest obstacle, there's a couple obstacles that I overcome. Number one is people don't realize that they need it. Either they don't realize that their speaking has a lot of room for improvement, Or, like we just talked about, they don't recognize that speaking is such an important part of their business. The difference between owning a business and simply selling stuff or doing a service for a fee is your messaging, how well you communicate who you are, what you do, why you do it. Notice I didn't say how you do it. That comes later. Your initial messaging has to be an extension of who you are. A lot of people don't understand how important that is. Another obstacle I have to overcome is people's perceptions of what public speaking really is. We talked about the slides, and you also mentioned TED Talks. TED Talks have their place. It's a nice condensed academic lecture. Also, if people have experienced terrible trauma, and this is a chance to put it out on stage so other people are encouraged to tell their story, I'm all for it. But TED Talks are not the pinnacle of public speaking because it's a show. The words are scripted, the movements are staged, and the audience is irrelevant. It's community theater. You might as well do Shakespeare in the park. If you like to watch TED Talks for an educational experience, fine. As a teacher, I don't like them because administrators are always telling us, show the TED Talk. So I have to overcome some misconceptions on what public speaking really is and the importance of it. So when people come to me, we just talk about your business. And I say this, if you sit down with me after 30 minutes, I'll have your keynote presentation mapped out. That's one of my great talents. I can name all the state capitals. I'm very good with simple arithmetic. And if we talk for 30 minutes, I've got an entire notebook here I call the Green Monster, full of people I meet with. This is what your presentation looks like. And it can be used in a variety of things. You also have to get over the misconception of what a venue looks like. Because we see the theaters, the conference rooms, the big expos, we don't realize that sometimes public speaking is in front of 5 people at a conference table. Sometimes it's at a pub and you're roasting the office manager who's also the company softball team shortstop. It's everywhere in so many forms. So get over those misconceptions about what speaking is and why you need it. And once we're ready to go and you know this is good for your business, we're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I like it. So definitely there's plenty of opportunities. So you said Toastmasters. So if someone is getting started and they start going to Toastmasters, what's another place that they might look for where they can actually start bringing benefit to the community? Would you say that'd be like a chamber, or what's your thought there?
There are so many organizations. I'll tell you a story. I don't know if you can hear the little girl upstairs crying. Her birthday was a couple of days ago. She's upset already. But
okay.
Yeah, she's not nervous about speaking.
It's real world.
Exactly. I always say that in my TikTok videos. You hear ambulances going by. You got to incorporate that. That's part of speaking as well. The thing is, I'll give you an example. Somebody in my club, she joined Toastmasters in her 70s, just looking for something to do during COVID, and she fell in love with speaking. But she was involved with League of Women Voters, and there's another organization, I should know it. And there's also part of the Baha'i faith, and she's part of a group there. She speaks to these groups, and she didn't go out looking.
Oh, no.
Get me booked as a speaker. I always say you're already booked. Somebody's already looking for you. So that the organizations find you, and you just have to know what to do. Once you get there, the audiences are waiting for you.
Gotcha. I lost you a little bit on that one, Mike.
Okay.
We froze up. So if we could go back, so I'm going to just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 so I can find myself here. But you said like the person who was behind. Yeah. Okay. So they went from the Toastmasters, so then you froze up and then I lost you.
Okay. So
yeah. Okay.
We have one member of our club who joined Toastmasters probably in her 70s. It was a COVID thing, and she was looking for something to do, joined the organization, and fell in love with it. Not only the group, but also the public speaking potential. And she took that to organizations that she had belonged to. I believe the League of Women Voters. There was something about the Baha'i faith, and she talks in these different groups. There was another group, I forgot what it is, but she's involved in so many groups. Now she has a chance to lead. And she talks about it like Toastmasters. It's a very welcoming environment, but everything you say is being evaluated, and it has to be within a certain time and meet a certain construct. Whereas when you leave Toastmasters and speak outside, it's easy. I compare it to playing Little League baseball. I don't know why my Little League was so competitive, but it was. I wasn't so good, but then I go off to summer camp and play softball with kids, and boom, I'm like the best softball player they have. It's the same thing. You go into Toastmasters, you're constantly speaking, constant evaluation, constantly comparing yourself to people you don't need to compare yourself to. Then you leave the meeting and you go somewhere else, and wow, this is it. You don't have to look for stages. They are everywhere. Yeah, the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary, it's always an opportunity for you. But the opportunities to speak are everywhere.
Great stuff. So Mike McQuillan, this has been excellent. Where can people find more of you if they want to find out how they can improve their speaking or maybe possibly hire you as a speaker's coach?
Excellent. Well, if you're watching this on LinkedIn right now, I'm sure Harry has a link to my profile, so check it out. I post 5 to 7 days a week, so a reaction and a comment will be appreciated. And you can find me on my Calendly. Now, if you're in the fitness industry specifically, you can find my website, fitpresenter.com. That's my name in the description, but just put a dash in between fit. I don't know if it's a hyphen or a dash, but fit-presenter.com. And that is public speaking specifically for the fitness industry. And those are the 2 best ways to get in touch with me, through LinkedIn or through my website.
Excellent. We'll put both of those links in the show notes. So
Excellent.
Thank you, Mike. This has been great. I appreciate your insights. And, you've been a real blessing. I mean, I've watched your TikTok videos and you've brought up a number of points over the past year or so where I said, I got to do better at that. And, so you're helping a lot of people. You may not even get the thanks for it, but definitely if you're looking to improve, find Mike McQuillan. He will help you out.
Thank you for listening to Sales Made Easy. If you found value in our conversations, please subscribe and leave a review. Our goal is to provide practical strategies for growing your business while staying true to your values. Remember, success in sales is about serving your clients. Serve first, and the selling will follow.